Imagine this. You've spent weeks building the perfect n8n workflows. Your automations are humming along, saving you hours of manual work. And then disaster strikes. Maybe your server crashes, or you accidentally delete a critical workflow, or you make a change that breaks everything, and you have no way to go back. All that work, poof, gone in an instant. That nightmare scenario is exactly what we're trying to prevent today. I'm going to show you how to set up an automated backup system for n8n that requires zero ongoing effort, but gives you complete peace of mind. By the end of this video, you'll have a solution that automatically backs up your workflows to GitHub every few hours with decent descriptions of exactly what changed. Now, before we dive in, let's look at what n8n already gives us for backups. If you click this little clock icon in the top right of any workflow, you'll see a history of recent changes. But there are some limitations here, major limitations. First, unless you're on a paid plan, you only get about 1 day of history. Second, these revision titles don't tell you anything useful about what changed. You have to click through each one to figure out what's different. And third, if you just change values inside a node, it's nearly impossible to tell which revision has the change that you're looking for. So while it's better than nothing, this built-in feature won't save you if your server crashes or if you need to roll back to a version from last week. Now, n8n does provide some templates for backup workflows that you can find on their website. There are templates for backing up to Google Drive and Dropbox, GitHub, or even Bitbucket. These templates follow a similar pattern. They run backups every 4 to 12 hours, placing the latest backup in the main directory. A new backup run moves previous backups to a date-stamped archive folder. For GitHub templates specifically, they check if workflows have changed and push those changes. But the commit messages aren't very descriptive. This makes it difficult to know which version to restore if something goes wrong. You'd have to examine each version manually. Now, what if, instead, every few hours you automatically backed up all your workflows to GitHub with detailed commit messages explaining exactly what changed? And what if restoring any workflow was as simple as copy and paste? That's exactly what we're building today. Here's a quick look at my GitHub repository. I've backed up all n8n workflows there. As you can see, every commit has a clear description of what changed, making it super easy to find the version that I need if something goes wrong. Now, if you're finding this helpful and want more content on automating your workflows with n8n, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. I'm creating new tutorials every week to help you build more powerful automations and keep them running smoothly. And if you want to see these videos upwards of a week earlier with extra enhanced content, consider joining my Patreon or YouTube membership. Links are in the description below. Before I show you my complete solution, I want to highlight an amazing tool that was a bit of the inspiration for the workflow, and it makes all of this possible. I discovered a fine-tuned AI model created by Tavernari called Git Commit Message that's available on Ollama.com. This model produces clear, descriptive commit messages automatically from Git diffs. It understands code changes and can explain them in plain English. While you could use this tool manually with regular Git workflows, I wanted something completely automated for our n8n backups. That's why I integrated this model directly into our backup workflow, allowing it to analyze changes in our n8n workflows and generate meaningful commit messages with no human intervention. If you're curious about this model, I'll link to it in the description, but don't worry, you don't need to understand how it works to implement our backup solution. I've done all that work for you. Let's look at this backup system together. I'll take you through it step by step, and I promise it's simpler than it might seem. First, we need to create a new workflow in n8n. We'll add 2 triggers, one scheduled trigger that runs every few hours, and one manual trigger for testing. Both triggers lead to our configuration node. Here we'll set 5 important values. The GitHub repository name, in my case it's technoevangelist/n8n backup. 2, the local directory where we'll store our Git repository. 3, the username of the user who owns that directory. 4, the email associated with your GitHub account. And 5, finally, the folder that is probably the parent of the Git repo. What makes this workflow different from other backup solutions is that we're using Git the way it's meant to be used, with a local file system. This gives us all the power of Git's version control. Next, we need to check if our local repository exists already. We do this by looking for the workflow JSON files in our specified directory. Then we use an if node to handle 2 scenarios. Either the repo exists, or we need to clone it for the first time. If the repo doesn't exist yet, we use the Git node to clone it. You'll need to create a GitHub personal access token for this. Go to your GitHub settings, then developer settings, and create a classic token with repo permissions. After cloning, we set the Git user configuration to match what we specified in our config node. Then I add a Git diff filter that just makes it easier to see what changed. I'll tell you more about that in just a sec. Now comes the main part of our workflow. We get all the workflows from n8n using the n8n node. You'll need to create an API key in your n8n settings for this, and then a credential to use here. Then we convert each workflow to a JSON file and write it to our local Git repository. Remember, we define the path in the config node, then clone the repo there. The magic happens in the next steps. At the command line, Git will let us generate diffs of our code. A diff shows what lines are different compared to the version already pushed to GitHub. If you call git diff, then the file name, it'll show the diff for just that file. But if you just do a git diff on the file as is, you'll see the positions of the nodes changed on the canvas and the updated date changed. This isn't all that useful for figuring out what actually changed. So the filter that got created will parse that stuff out so it isn't used for the diff. But we don't want to remove it from the actual files. We use git diff to see what's changed in each file, then filter out workflows that haven't changed. For each changed workflow, we first add just the one workflow JSON file to Git, and then we use an AI model to generate a meaningful commit message based on the diff. This node was actually something I changed recently. I'll go into detail on that change in a little while. And finally, commit the changes with the generated message. Then we repeat those steps for each workflow with a diff. We push all the committed files to GitHub. Let me show you how easy it is to restore a workflow if something goes wrong. Simply go to your GitHub repository, find the workflow you need to restore, navigate to the commit that has the version you want, click on the file, then click raw to see the pure JSON, select all and copy, and then in n8n create a new workflow and just paste the JSON in. That's it. Your workflow has been returned to its previous state. So about that AI agent node that I swapped out. The AI agent is pretty cool. It lets you work with almost any AI service in a consistent way. But there are some things I don't love about it. First, I couldn't set a timeout for the AI. Sometimes you give it a prompt and it just goes and goes and goes and goes for a while. I wanted to give up and try again after a certain amount of time. But the bigger problem is that it was built with LangChain. Now, a lot of folks love LangChain because it allows you to build with AI in a consistent way across services. But it's never been a really good choice when using Ollama. This has been true since we started creating Ollama. There were issues that I would tell LangChain about with how they interacted with Ollama that they just didn't fix. In another workflow, I wanted it to output to a strict JSON format, but the AI agent refused to do it because the model didn't support tools. Being able to set the JSON output format has nothing to do with the ability to use tools, but LangChain thinks it does. In this flow, it was mostly about the timeout and doing system prompts correctly, which LangChain has always had issues with. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now. Now, with this backup workflow in place, you never have to worry about losing your work again. Every few hours, we safely store all your changes on GitHub with clear descriptions of what changed. If anything ever goes wrong, you're just a copy-paste away from getting back up and running. The best part, once you set this up, it runs completely automatically. No remembering to make backups, no manual commit messages, just peace of mind knowing your work is safe. I love working with these tools, and they do an amazing job of making my life easier. One feature that makes this possible is that I can call Ollama on my local machine. So make sure you watch this video next that shows you how to do that. Thanks so much for watching, and happy automating. Bye.